Hello, viewers. Welcome to the podcast series from Corteva Agriscience on nurturing crops and conversation in relation to sustainable agriculture and food security. In this episode, we will be deliberating about the importance of responsible crop protection for food security. My name is Valasubramanian, regulatory and stewardship leader for South Asia. I'm based in Hyderabad, and I'm the moderator for this podcast. Before we get into our discussion with eminent panelists, let me set the context a bit. There is a growing need for producing more food from less land to feed the growing population. This is well aware for the entire society. But the agricultural production faces several challenges, as we know, that includes climate change or evolving pests and diseases, declining natural resources. If we consider the pests and diseases a challenge, globally, on an average, 30% of the crops grown for human consumption are lost each year due to pre-harvest pests and diseases and weeds, right? So this is a considerable number, right? You would agree with me that 30% of crop loss per year due to pests and diseases is a considerable number. These in-field losses not only threaten our global food security, but it also has the potential to limit the food availability to the public, and also this could lead to the price escalation and several other consequent issues, right? However, since the domestication of the crops for agriculture, crop protection measures have been discovered, identified, and it has become a part of our agricultural production to ensure that the crops are produced by minimizing the damages because of the pests and diseases. Crop protection measures and crop protection products in the last several decades have improved tremendously. New technologies, new chemistries, and crop protection measures have become indispensable for food production, right? To say that we cannot separate agriculture from crop protection, so that is where we are. With such a vital role that crop protection really plays, there are also some concerns and challenges we continue to observe. Maybe due to myths and preconceptions or misconception about the improper use, or lack of complete understanding of the technologies or the chemistries, and prevalence of the counterfeit products. These are some of the challenges the crop protection things which challenges we are trying to witness. So in this context, the question comes, what is responsible crop protection means? And why it is so important? And who are the stakeholders associated with that? And what policy imperatives are actually required to address a responsible crop protection so that it continue to provide the foundation for and sustainable agriculture going forward. Right? With this context, we have three experts with a varied experience in the field of plant protection. Dr. Malvika Choudhary from CABI, Regional Coordinator, Asia. Dr. Sujoy Saha, Principal Scientist, National Research Center for Grapes, ICAR. Dr. Rajat Sharma, Principal Scientist and Cluster Leader, Crop Protection and Seed Health, IPRISAT. So welcome, Dr. Malvika, Dr. Saha, Dr. Sharma. Nice to have you all here. So with this context, and my first question is about, we know crop protection products are vital for food production, and this is a fact. My first question is to Dr. Saha. Could you kindly briefly tell us what are the exciting trends and innovations in the crop protection domain, especially with reference to India?
Yeah, good morning once again. Well, if you really ask for the innovations, what I feel at the present moment is that there's a lot of artificial intelligence being used in the domain of crop protection. Is artificial intelligence in the sense the process of monitoring, the process of assessment of diseases, and the process of application of pesticides. That is one thing which is very clear. Second thing which I would like to highlight, that till now we have been talking a lot about pesticides per se. We have been talking about fungicides, insecticides, herbicides, biocontrol agents. What we see in this domain now is perhaps the use of secondary metabolites, the use of new novel chemicals which are not exactly cidal or killing in nature. Something which alters the metabolism of the plants, something which induces more resistance to the plants. So that is a particular domain which is coming to the fore. Third, what I see is the concept of multisites. Previously, we used to talk about a fungicide only. So now we are trying to look into chemicals, which is a fungicide, which is a nematicide, as well as something which induces resistance. Now, these are the domains which I find that, coming up as an innovation. I mean, really a new concept which will be used in the times to come in the domain of crop protection, irrespective of the crop.
No, this is good, Dr. Saha. I think the crop protection continues to grow because of the discovery and invention, and also to bring the new technologies, and how we can actually look at things in a totally a different way, right? And so this is really helping us to move to our next question. So now, probably this question is to Dr. Malvika. So this is also indicating that the continuous growth in the discovery and new molecule and new way of thinking, and including artificial intelligence for crop protection measures. What does responsible crop protection means? Because we are bringing technologies, chemistries, and several other supplementary informations to support this farming community about use of the crop protection. So here, what is responsible crop protection means to you, and who are the main stakeholders associated with that?
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Wallace, and good morning to everyone. As you know, I'm associated with CABI, and CABI is working for food security and livelihoods. I would say, yes, it's really important for us to focus on the responsible use of crop protection, like how Dr. Saha just mentioned that there are plethora of low toxic alternates which are available for the farmers right now. But how much is the information that is reaching them is something we really need to wonder about, because though there are technologies with the research, and research is making good efforts with extension to extend it to the farmers, but we also understand that the ratio between the extension officers, which are agricultural service providers, and the farmers is not too great. So there's a huge gap which has to be filled. So I would say that we need to focus on giving this right information to the farmers. And how do we do that? So in this digital era, and how Dr. Saha just mentioned about artificial intelligence, etc., we need to think about digital tools which are coming into action in not only helping the farmers and the agricultural service providers to make decisions, but also to enhance their information and knowledge. So CABI's program Plantwise Plus is focusing on 3 impact pathways, and out of which, when I talk about the gap and filling in the gap of information, I would say that farm advisory is something we need to focus on. And the farm advisory using the digital tools is something where the digital tools need to be developed. There are certain digital tools like Cabby has Plantwise Plus Knowledge Bank, which has information on right kind of inputs to be used for a particular pests, and also some digital tools like Crop Sprayer app, where we are using the chemicals, but chemicals have to be used in a right quantity. So this is a kind of calculator which would help the agri-service providers and farmers to use right amount of chemicals while they prepare their spray tanks or the knapsack sprayers. And also, like we just Dr. Saha mentioned about bioprotection products. So these products are available and many of them are nationally registered, but the farmers should be using the right bioprotection products, which are recognized, acknowledged by our policymakers as they have been tested thoroughly for their safety to the farmers and the environment. So Cabby Bioprotection Portal brings this information to the agriculture service providers and also the farmers, that which are the chemicals which can be which are the bioprotection products which can be used for a particular crop and pest combinations. And as you see, like when we talk about responsible crop protection, and you ask me who are the stakeholders. So the main stakeholders is farmers, then of course the agriculture service providers, the researchers, the policymakers, and the agro input dealers, also the private sectors. So these are the stakeholders who are actually responsible in driving the crop protection in agricultural systems.
Thank you, Dr. Malvika. So that really takes me to the question to Dr. Sharma. Dr. Sharma, I think ICAR is one of the organizations in India, has a large role it plays in the agriculture sector, as well as connecting with the farmers and different stakeholders in India for Indian agriculture, for benefit of the Indian agriculture. So from your perspective, what would you say about this stakeholders and how well we are equipped to really bring awareness to the farmers through multiple channels? And what is your experience on that?
When we talk about different stakeholders, as Dr. Malvika mentioned, there are different stakeholders, right from farmers, researchers, and private sectors, policymakers, and all of them actually, right? So our major focus at ICISAT that has been, when we talk about crop protection, it's mainly on the host plant resistance aspect, and where we have largely contributed actually. So when we talk about even safe crop protection measures, I think when we talk about the safety, if we include host plant resistance in our control measures or protecting our crops from the different diseases and pests, I think that play a very important role actually, right? Because when we talk about host plant resistance, though it's expensive at the research phase, but farmer need not to spend anything, any additional amount actually for the other control measures. And then host plant resistance is very economical and environment friendly, because there are the concerns, when we talk about the usage of pesticides, or when the pesticides are not judiciously used actually, right? So our prime focus, and even the focus of our cluster on crop protection, is primarily on host plant resistance, identifying different stable sources of resistance which can be utilized in our breeding program. I would like to give one example of very success story of one disease, what is called as downy mildew of pearl millet actually. So if we look at in the past, before 70s, it was not a major disease in case of pearl millet, right? But with the introduction of hybrids, because we always try to develop new cultivars, we try to improve our cultivars, and the hybrid technology that has really contributed to enhanced yield gain actually, right? But with the introduction of hybrids, because earlier there were only few hybrid that was being cultivated on farm land actually, and then that led to the disease development, and they were there were epidemics somewhere in late 1970s and 80s actually, and then that called the attention of all different even from the research groups, ICAR, right, from the NAS partner as well as from the private sector, actually how to address this. So systematical studies, that started right from the monitoring of the pathogen virulence spectrum, so that that information is used while we screen our breeding material. So a lot of material that was screened both under greenhouse condition as well as at farmer locations at different, even in different countries, so that we get our material exposed to the different populations, pathogen population, which is also important, right? When we talk about host plant resistance, and then that led to the identification of very stable sources of resistance, and these resistance sources, they were statistically utilized in our breeding program, right? And then and once that was done, so we developed some of those elite breeding lines, because hybrids, they are, as you're aware, as they are developed by crossing the B or AB pair and with the this R lines. So we started working on developing those elite material actually, and which was shared with both public and private sector partners. So now when we talk about those stakeholders, now this comes the role of different players here, right? So the story didn't stop here just by developing some of those elite lines. Because those lines were developed, shared with the partners. They actually, well, the hybrids, private sector played a very crucial role, developing those hybrid and taking it to the farmers' fields. So this, and then because of that diversity, since 1990s, there is not even a single epidemic of the disease, right? So this is what we very proudly say, when we talk about host plant resistance, how this has contributed actually for the management of disease, and how different stakeholders, right, from both from the researchers as well as even from the involvement of public private sector partnership, that has really played a very critical role here,
No,
right?
absolutely, Dr. Sharma. This is a great example which really reflects um, how responsible crop protection involves multiple stakeholders, how each one get really benefited. With that downy mildew example, and there is another great example which at least I'm aware, Dr. Saha is associate great. Dr. Saha can explain that, because the grape network, right? When you explained this downy mildew thing, I got reflected on the grape network, what the National Grape Research Center really adopted. Dr. Saga, could you please given a brief about the grape network and how the that could be an example for the responsible crop protection, because it really reflects that it added a lot of value to our grape markets in India.
Yes, I'll just give you first of all the brief background why it all started, because that will make a clear visibility about why the success story and this and what happened was history. Basically, in the year 2006, there were some rejections due to some fungicides. I will not mention the name of those fungicides. So, due to this, our grape growers got a setback. And as you know, the grape stands tall as far as the economy of the country is concerned. So, at that time, APIDA, the State Department, and to some extent the National Horticulture Board, they approached NRC-Grapes that how to mitigate this. So what we did was at that time that we registered the growers and their plots. So a code number was given to each plot, so we could track exactly which district, which gram panchayat, which grower, and which row of the crop. So once that is done, the grower now continues to upload his package of practice. Now, the package of practice should be in accordance with the fungicides, insecticides, or the pesticides which are labeled as far as CIBRC is concerned. We went a step further, and this is where NRC-Grapes stood out. We said that in these cases, the bioefficacy and the residue has to be done in NRC-Grapes, and the PHI, the pre-harvest interval, we do not abide by the CIBRC days. We see the exact story on the field. In the label, you might get a PHI of, let's say, 10 days. But when you come down to the field and when you are looking into the European Union stringent conditions, that 10 days gets extended to 21, 28, 30, many cases 60. So we told our growers that, listen, this is how it should happen. Grape growers are extremely educated, tech savvy, and they're like absorbent cotton. So they got this information. They stuck to the information which we gave them. If we say that, let's say, X fungicide has a pH of 35 days, they'll make sure that it will be 35 days. This story started from 2006. More fungicides got evolved. Organizations like DuPont, Syngenta, Bayer, Corteva, everybody. Corteva was not there, of course, at that time. So everybody joined hands. We worked together on the field. For each fungicide, insecticide, PHI was demarcated. It was put in Annexure 5, and then what happened was history. Every plot we could monitor. There were accredited labs. They were trained. Instruments were set in. NRC-Grapes stood as on the field. What is the POP? In the lab, what is the MRL? What is the PHI? Today, the rejection is less than 1.3%. And that too can be due to a lot of reasons. It does not come from pesticides. It can be from some feed, from compost, from certain illegal means where a lot of chemicals come to our country, not due to what are registered pesticides are. So GrapeNet that way, as on date, even today, when there are hailstorms, when there are diseases, we get a very assured voice from the growers of grapes that the crop is perfect, we are following the schedule, and I hope the exports are going to be fine.
No, so yeah, Dr. Saha, I think that's another great example of what a responsible crop protection means and how the different stakeholders are involved and actually demonstrated the end results, because actually the end results make the farmers to really make their harvest without or with minimal loss or without much impact. In that way, it improves the farmer's livelihood, right? With the downy mildew experience, and also these two are great examples with the artificial intelligence really moving in. Absolutely, I think the next decade could be using this artificial intelligence and then digital era to communicate more and more to the farmers and to different stakeholders to make such stories really happening to ensure the food security is addressed. While these are all great examples, we continue to see there are some kind of a myths and challenges, right? Both Dr. Saga and Dr. Sharma, I think when you explained it, also the crop protection industry, there are some challenges despite all these efforts. Is there some key challenges what you faced? Could you briefly tell what those challenges are? And this question could be to all three of you. Probably I would start with Dr. Saga, then go to Dr. Sharma and Dr. Malvika. What are the key challenges we think while we are making such a great progress, these challenges come into the picture? It may be due to myths or it due to the some kind of preconceived notions, or it could be technical challenges. What are the top three challenges that we will have to understood so that that would also become a part of the communication to enable the farmers to understand things in the right way so that they get maximum benefit out of the technologies and trades and chemicals. We'll start with Dr. Saga, please.
Yes, I mean, if you look into challenges, I will go one by one. First of all, let's look into the technical challenge. The technical challenge, yes, we do have a robust, very elaborate sort of a process as far as registration is concerned, which is very good, which I fully, support to the hilt. But at the same time, I would also, wish that this registration process can be a bit more fast-tracked, because that always helps in bringing new molecules. If I look into the number of pesticides which are registered by CIBRC, it should be somewhere between 320 to 330 as on date. If I look into other countries, where we have around 650, 700, country like Bangladesh has something around 800. So question is, that is one thing which I found that regulatory wise there is a bottleneck, which we all have to work and get into it. That is one. Second is the awareness. I cannot, or we cannot, judge anything by looking at grape brewers or apple brewers, which
Yes.
Dr. Rajan has just now said about maize, Sclerospora graminicola. I think that is the fungus, if I'm not wrong, in maize downy mildew. So these things needs to be disseminated to the growers of every corner. It can be Mizoram, it can be Manipur, it can be somewhere around in Rajasthan and far south or far north. So that dissemination of information, the awareness to the growers about new molecules. I still find in places metalaxyl being used as a foliar spray. I mean, that's outrageous. Metalaxyl is an SD fungicide.
That's right.
We cannot and we should not use metalaxyl for a spray. It kills the product. So these are certain bottlenecks which we need to look into. That is one. And last but not the least, the anti-propaganda of pesticides. I will just period. I'll just say a period. Anti-propaganda of pesticides. We have a teeming millions. We have so many people around us. The population is burgeoning. We have a challenge for food for all. That's what my government tells me. So keeping that in the backdrop, keeping that as the sustainability, keeping that as the food security, we need to use pesticides. Without pesticides, we cannot move ahead. Let's make one thing, one statement clear. Safe use, yes, with a big S. So this propaganda which goes on against pesticides, leading to cancers, leading to endocrine disruptors, this is something which we need to address with a very strong hand. Awareness is important. So talking about, I'll just take a few more lines. Talking about cancer, I was going through certain literature. There are states in India which use least number of pesticides. Example is Mizoram. You have highest number of cancer patients out there. So why blame Punjab on it only? There were propaganda that there was pesticides in groundwater. Government did a fantastic survey in the groundwaters of Punjab. I think Faridkot, Bathinda, these are some of the pockets, if I remember right. And when we are talking with the the groundwater department, they found fluoride in it. They found uranium in it. There were no pesticides. So these are something which we need to counter, because there will be, all this propaganda is going to come. We talk about green technology, but green technology does not necessarily keep out pesticides. So these things we need to have a look at. These are the technical challenges. When I talk about pesticides, the first question that comes to me, this particular chemical is an endocrine disruptor. Endocrine disruptor in case of mouse. Do you have a systematic study from a medical college to say that EBDCs are endocrine disruptors? We don't have it. Let's come down to the facts. So these challenges, as a pathologist, I think Dr. Rajan and Dr. Malvika is going to agree to me. We need to safeguard environment. We need to go for stewardship. Absolutely okay. But at the same time, we want food security as well. If we live, then only comes the rest part of it. Simple and straight.
Yes, Dr. Saga, I think this is where I think worldwide people really understood that crop protection measures and crop protection chemicals are indispensable tools for agriculture production. Now, I think that's a great views about the technical and awareness, as well as the anti-propaganda challenges. And can I request Dr. Malvika to share some additional comments on that perspective? From CABI has a lot of awareness programs. So what are the myths and challenges that you encounter to prepare your awareness programs?
Thank you very much for the question. And yeah, I agree that CABI has a lot of initiative where we create awareness amongst the stakeholders, especially the farmers, regarding the use of pesticides. And as you said, pesticides are definitely indispensable, but we also have to see the correct use of pesticides. So the three major constraints, if you ask me, would be: one is regarding the pests that we don't know about. So these are transboundary pests, and these pests we never had a knowledge about. Like, for example, in 2018 came fall armyworm all of a sudden in India, and was actually reported from Karnataka, where I sit in, and it created a kind of fear amongst the farmers, and everybody was kind of putting in efforts to know what this pest is and how do we control it. So if we can prepare ourselves, knowing about the region, if we know that what can be the possible pest threats to us, and we prepare ourselves, what we call early preparedness, and that is what CABI is being doing with the partners all over the globe, to prepare, understanding the global scenario, because we work in 3 developing regions of the world, and mostly these invasives are coming from Latin America to Africa and then to Asia. So knowing what are the natural enemies, or what are the plant protection measures which have been adopted in the area where they originate from, is very, very helpful to communicate to the area where they are being introduced. So it is also important to use some like how we said about digital devices, like CABI has this horizon scanning tool and pest risk analysis tool. So using these tools, if we can prioritize our pests and prepare ourselves well ahead of time, so that when this issue comes, because these are inevitable, and when they come to our country, we can know like what can be the plan of action. So one is about invasive, because these invasives are actually costing around $70 billion per year out of the $220 billion that generally pest and disease cost. So we understand that the pest and disease cause a crop loss of almost 20 to 40%. And if we are preparing ourselves well ahead of time for the invasive species, that can be one thing which we can consider. Secondly is, yes, pesticides are really indispensable, like Dr. Saha said, but then there are some molecules which he only is speaking about as safe, which are not creating, pesticide is not always having a knockdown effect on a human being. It can be acute and it can be chronic, which can lead to carcinogenic and mutagenic effects. So these are highly hazardous pesticides, as we call HHPs. So looking into these HHPs, if we can really wipe out or wean away our farmers using these HHPs and introduce the low toxic molecules, that is very effective. I'm really happy the way NRC has actually tackled using PHI. But how many farmers knows about PHI? Okay, the grape network was fortunate enough to be associated with NRC and do things accordingly. But how many of us know about re-entry intervals and PHIs? So through CABI initiative, like our Plantwise program, where we introduced plant clinics, this is a community-driven program where we were enhancing the information and knowledge of progressive farmers and also agriculture service providers into diagnosis and recommendations, where the recommendations were given as per PHI and REI, and where plant clinics were being held in local community level, so that the farmer get this information right on time to adopt. So this can be the second approach through the constraint of unawareness. And third is that, yes, we using the chemical in a right way, like we do advocate about plant protection equipment, PPEs, which are not so easy for the farmers to adopt. So we should look into these aspects, how to make farmers comfortable with the use of PPEs and use the pesticide in a right manner. So I would say these are the 3 focal points for us to consider. Thank you.
The great points. I think that brings the question to Dr. Sharma, because ICAR is a global organization, and there are a lot of seed movement, germplasm movement, And you also work on bringing out new control measures through native traits and other kind of breeding programs. Um, in this context, and then how do you look at this invasive pests and what kind of preparedness that ICAR try to really bring for the benefits of the farmers or anticipating? Do you have any kind of programs which anticipate, do the model, and bring the communications to the different stakeholders?
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Walls. Actually, ICAR, like all other CG centers, we do have a specific lab or a unit called germplasm unit, germplasm health unit, right? GHU is what we call. So their role is specifically to guarantee safe movement of germplasm, right? When it comes out to be, a sharing of that germplasm. We all appreciate actually, the contribution of germplasm exchange towards the crop improvement, because if there was no germplasm movement, there would not have been any green revolution happening actually, right? So that movement of germplasm or sharing of elite cultivar or the germplasm concerned with bank, that is very essential. But there comes a hidden risk actually. Introduction of new pests and diseases. Dr. Malvika talked about those invasive pests, but seed are also a carrier of several pests and diseases, or those pathogens which are of quarantine significance. So we do take care, all those processes, and then based on the national and international legal requirement for the phytosanitary measures that need to be taken care of actually while we export our seed material, right? So that is with respect to when we share our seed material, right? Though we are not the plant quarantine authority, actually, for any nation, their NPPOs, National Plant Protection Quarantine, NPPOs, National Plant Protection Organizations, they are the quarantine authorities. In case of India, we have DPPQS, as a quarantine regulatory authority. But when we talk about the germplasm exchange, for research purpose, we have NVPGR. So what ICAR do is we work in very close collaboration with NVPGR. So we do also all those tests, which are required to state the health status of any consignment. So that we are doing, and then we are working closely with NVPGR for the safe movement of germplasm. That is with respect to the export. It's not only for the export, but when we are introducing new germplasm, because our even our gene bank or our breeding material, breeding programs, they may be requiring certain genotypes or certain lines which are not available in our gene bank or which are not available in our breeding program. So we do support our breeding program as well by bringing those germplasm from outside India. So that is also done very carefully while just following all those phytosanitary measures. So we do have one important requirement for this import process is the availability of post-entry quarantine isolation area. So that we do have that as well. So the idea is to follow all those phytosanitary measures and then make this germplasm available both for ICAR scientists as well as to the global scientific community.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I think crop protection is also a key enabler for government's objective of food security, doubling farmers' incomes and access to safe food. This is not only applicable to India, worldwide. This is an important concept. So in this case, what are the policy improvements which are required to ensure that the responsible crop protection become a kind of a mandate for all the players, and while they are using crop protection measures, what the policymakers can do to enable the different stakeholders in the value chain, not only farmers. When we talk about in our conversation, we understood very clearly the responsible crop protection means the end user of the crop protection measures are farmers, but the food is with the consumers. But before it reaches the farmers, lot of other stakeholders are involved in the overall process. So here, one of the components is the government policy initiatives are very important in order to give a favorable environment to bring the right science, the right awareness, and bring incentives as well to educate these farmers as well, so that the entire community understood the crop protection measures in the right way, and it helps for improved food security. In that perspective, what are your brief thoughts on the policy imperatives required to advance the crop protection to the next level of engagement to address the food security? Maybe I'll start with Dr. Malvika and then to Dr. Saga and Dr. Sharma. Malvika, please.
Thank you, Mr. Wallace. Yeah, it's very important because though top-down approach is not so much recommended, but definitely the policies play an important role while we implement such kind of initiatives. I would say that for strengthening the pesticide management, especially because you see pesticide life cycle has got different components, right from development to regulation to manufacture to storage to use and storage, not only till there but also how it has been disposed and what are we doing with the containers, etc. So we need to strengthen our pesticide management, and how do we strengthen is by strengthening the governance of the production, trade and use of pesticides, by strengthening the monitoring of pesticide use and its effect, also by strengthening the evaluation of pesticides, and focusing more on innovation of pesticide management, products for pesticide management, and having a targeted research for the development. In other words, strengthening the R&D by both funds, technical backups, etc. And as we have been talking quite a lot about it, but the major policy that should be focusing is how we are creating an awareness, what are the channels through which the right information is reaching the farmers, and also there might be a lot of policy, but how much are we adhering to it, how much is the coherence. This is something that we need to focus on. Thank you.
And Dr. Saga?
Yes, this being a very tricky question because I belong to the part of the government. But what I would suggest, I mean, what I have seen and what we experience in the field, working with all organizations, we work with almost all organizations. One, first of all, which needs to be understood, that we do not synthesize pesticides. India does not synthesize pesticides. We all get it from different organizations who are mostly organizations from other countries. So when that particular pesticide comes to the country, we undergo the process of registration, etc. The next part after registration is to educate the growers, educate the farmers, educate the commercial channel partners regarding the use. And last but not the least, before it goes, we should first educate our government machinery. If, let's say, X fungicide is being launched, let us first try to talk to the government machineries, our field level workers, the horticulture officers, the agriculture officers, and make them aware that it is not only that age-old fungicide that we are talking about. These are fungicides which are into the foray, which are safer, less toxic, less benign to environment, because it has undergone a lot of processes. So that part needs to be done. We have to start from there. Educating the growers does not really matter, because a government officer or a government channel knows how to go stepwise to reach up to the last level. That is very important. We always start it with the growers. It has to be from us. I mean, R&D people, research people, they know. But what about a horticulture officer who sits about 500 kilometers from the city, or an agricultural officer who is 600 kilometers from the main city? That part needs to be done. Digital way, that way is a boon. That way definitely is a boon. The reach out has increased. Second, continuous process of stewardship. Whether it is from the government side, whether it is from the private side, the advocacy of safe use of pesticides have to go on. That because knowledge is actually our main strength. Where whatever starts from, right from the Vedas, right from the Gita, if you see, so when we find a very simple and straight thing. Knowledge has to be there, so that knowledge dissemination is a must. It need not always be commercially driven, not necessary. Third, grouping of pesticides. I think CIBRC has been working on this. DFW also is behind it. So we are trying to look into grouping of pesticides and grouping of crops. Plant groups, if you are aware, it's already been done by the department. We are in the process of getting it, implemented. For example, if I have a pesticide against lettuce, it should be applicable for spinach. It should be applicable for amaranthus. So all leafy vegetables, one fungicide. All cucurbits, one fungicide. So there, the cost of the organizations being reduced, use that money for awareness, use that money for safeguarding, use that money for stewardship. We don't have, a huge amount of funds, but whatever we have, if we can, streamline these things, that will be highly beneficial. Policy-wise, another thing which we understood is that when we were talking to, people in different platforms who actually implement the policy, many of them are not quite aware of the ground realities. So here, that bridge of communication, here that that amalgamation of the two platforms are required. It's not only scientists, it's not only some secretary or joint secretary, honorable secretary or joint secretary, or some minister sitting in Delhi implementing. No, it has to be that give and take, that knowledge, information, that awareness program needs to be there at all levels. It's not that I know everything, not possible. I might say something which might not be practically feasible as far as the policymaker or some of my respected secretaries sitting in Delhi. Or he might have something which I can complement. I here means maybe we, the whole scientific community. So these are certain things which we found out to be extremely important. We have to imbibe good things from other organizations. If you look into biosecurity, Australia stands out. Stands out as far as biosecurity is concerned. You have been seeing the political and the geopolitical issues regarding invasive species. So these are areas where our policies need to be loop resistant, because if we can't do that, no matter how much we grow, no matter how much we can produce, downy mildew of maize is going to cause a havoc. Taking a tailpiece from Dr. Rajan perhaps. So here, that biosecurity part which Dr. Rajan had said, that what is this that he is doing, resistance screening, finding out the donors, putting it into breeding programs. All these things are a continuous process. We have to be alert. Things are not as 1970s. Biosecurity, biowarfare, all these things have come into the being. We have seen what havocs microbes can play. I would not like to reminiscent the things which happened a couple of years back. We lost so many of us. So these are important. If a virus comes, they are going to destroy our crops. If I remember right, Japan never shares their germplasm for paddy and fish, because that is their strength.
Yes,
we need to be very, very careful.
Yeah.
We need to be very, very careful. These are areas where policies needs to be there. The Biodiversity Act is in place. We need to abide by that. And the monitoring, safeguard, awareness, education with a big E. That is important.
No, that's a very comprehensive view of where the improvements could be made in terms of the policies. This also brings another big opportunity. When you talked about not only farmers, and because the moment we talk about awareness, it's mainly the farmers comes into the picture, but in the value chain, I think it starts from research, and the agricultural extension officers, several people who are involved before the product reaches the market. They need to have a good amount of knowledge and communication so that they are able to understand and translate. This actually brings a big opportunity for improvement in science communication in India. Probably we will not touch upon that. Science communication is something like bringing the entire information to a layman or common people in a language what everyone can understand. Because this is one of the take-home message that from this kind of a podcast. Also, now I'll request Dr. Sharma to share some brief comments on what is his thinking in terms of this policy improvements, listening to Dr. Malvika and Dr. Saha's comments.
I like to bring in the issue of that pesticide resistance here, right? So, we know that a pest develop resistance against specific pesticide when the same pesticide or the pesticide of same mode of action they are repeatedly sprayed on a particular area. So whether it is sometimes even farmers because of some ignorance they keep on spraying those pesticides and then ignorant of the fact that pest has already developed resistance against that pesticide, right? So there lies the importance of the mode of action of different pesticide, right? So that education is required. So when we advise farmer to go for a spray for some pesticide, and then there is some specific spray schedule that has to be based on the different mode of action of those pesticide, right? So and then and that awareness that has to be created right at the dealer level as well as at the farmer level, because when we are or I mean even with the extension specialist actually, but if there is a level based on the mode of action, then that will be very helpful actually. So as of now, it's not a mandatory in India to to have a level based on the mode of action, but I think that is the requirement. And then I think efforts are required to convince the CIB, RC to make pesticide leveling of mode of action as mandatory to help the farmers in the long run. I think that's more important. I can highlight some other points. Actually, there was some there were several discussions held in recently held international conference on plant health management at Hyderabad, which was organized by Plant Protection of India, and there were several such policy issues they were identified during those brainstorming sessions and all that. I think that are being shared with those policy makers, and I think that need attention of the policy makers. I think I don't have much time, otherwise I could have detail some of those policy issues those were identified there. Right.
Probably we need to have a separate podcast for the policy related discussion, I believe. Anyway, it's a great discussion. And then from my perspective is now in the last 20 minutes, I think we understood about what is the responsible crop protection. The take-home message for me, if I would have to say, is responsible crop protection is about the science, and responsible crop protection means taking the scientific knowledge to create awareness among the people in the value chain, because the concept of crop protection, responsible crop protection, is not just talking about farmers, but scientists to the people who are in the intermediate chain for the product to reach the farmers before the product gets into the farmer's hand, and post release of the product, and what kind of measures and what kind of practical uses and right way that they have to be used for applications in the crop for a better performance. And also after the harvest, and how that really gets the minimal residues by following the right practices, with all these kind of informations which need to be disseminated to different stakeholders so that everyone has a correct understanding of how the crop protection measures are really helping the agricultural productivity and ensuring the farmers' welfare as well as societal welfare to prevent this myths and kind of preconceived notions going away, because we are very clear that without crop protection there is no agriculture. Because if you are going to lose 30 to 50% of the produced crop due to pests and diseases, that actually leading to the food insecurity, right? So from that perspective, responsible crop protection means it's all about um, understanding. It's also bringing new science, making the new science and information available to many stakeholders and policymakers, getting involved to make those solutions available to the farmers at the right time. And so these are all well integrated ones which are required to be taken care by all the stakeholders. But what actually culminates here is now we all have part of the society, we all have big role to play in bringing awareness to the society. So this is the biggest takeaway from me from this podcast. Hopefully, I believe the viewers find this podcast useful to understand the importance of scientific communication and bring more awareness about what is crop protection and why responsible crop protection is everyone's duty to ensure a proper um, uh, food production, to ensure a food insecurity situation does not come up as the population continues to grow, the natural resources continue to decline. But science always uh, see all these challenges bringing opportunities for the science to innovate. That science is continuously advancing to bring solutions, but on the other side, these solutions need to be understood by several stakeholders so that that benefit reaches to the farmers and the end consumers in the right time to make the agriculture productivity continuously happening to meet the growing population. With that note, and I would like to thank all my guests, Dr. Malvika, Dr. Sharma, Dr. Saha, for sharing your great thoughts. It was wonderful, enlightening for me personally to understand what crop protection means and how it should be responsible, what it means is, to us as a common man. Thank you very much, and we will sign off.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Dr. Wallace.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Vala. Thank you, Dr. Sharma. Thank you, Dr. Malvika.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you all, and it was nice meeting all of you.
Yeah,
Yeah.
thank you.
Same.